Well, good afternoon, guys. It is May 30th, and I'm back in the site of the Sandhurst Fire. That fire burned late July in 2024. It's now 2026, of course. So it's been about 2 years of time for this forest to recover. And we're definitely seeing a bit more growth of these shoots of Gambel Oak, Quercus gambelii. This is a forest almost entirely composed of Quercus gambelii originally. But I'm seeing a lot more weeds coming up now. Originally, it was just a bunch of Lepidium draba, almost like a white carpet from a distance on this sort of barren forest floor. It's in a place where these new Gambel Oak shoots weren't growing, but we got a lot more weeds now. Seems like this stuff, this yellow clover or Melilotus officinalis, has taken over, unfortunately. It's kind of an annoying weed. It's not a super bad one, but it can be pretty aggressive at times. I think eventually, just like all of the other weeds here I saw growing previously, once it gets overtopped by the Gambel Oak, they'll just sort of die out and that'll be the end of it. But for now, they're busy establishing a seed bank and just being really obnoxious. I kind of wonder if there's any native species that would be here instead in this recovery phase. Got a few isolated, oh crap, I'm getting a lot of cheatgrass in my shoes. This is not going to be fun, but I got this guy. This is nice and native, of course. It's Balsamorhiza sagittata, or Arrowleaf Balsamroot. Not a whole lot of it growing here, probably because it's a species that takes a longer time to get established, and this was originally a closed forest. But yeah, at least, the only really good thing here is that the Quercus gambelii is doing quite well, and we have a few native plants aside from it, so let's see what else we can find here. Of course, all of this, where the cheatgrass is, the Bromus tectorum, that's all this stuff on the ground. It looks red, all the red-looking grass. It's dead. It's really obnoxious. It's called cheatgrass because, I guess, the ranchers, from their perspective, it sort of cheats their cattle out of a good harvest, or good feed or whatever, because it starts off as a nice palatable grass, but then it turns into this really nasty stuff. I mean, of course, it's bad for the environment, but cows and cattlemen don't like it either because it gets stuck in cows' teeth, like the mature seeds do. It can cause infections and stuff, so they don't like to eat it too much. Okay, now all this stuff on the ground here is senescent Alyssum desertorum. I'm pretty sure that's an annual, definitely in the family Brassicaceae though. So I'm saying senescent. That's kind of a weird term to use for this, but basically it's mature, it's ready to let its seeds go and just die forever. Because again, it's an annual. Another species from Central Asia, just like cheatgrass. Whoa. So they're kind of a dry wash here. What I'm really wondering is how long it's going to take for these trees to start breaking down and returning their nutrients to the soil, allowing them to start falling over again. As I mentioned previously, I think most of these Gambel Oaks are not growing from seeds, they're growing from the roots of these, mostly what might look like dead trees. They survived at the roots though through the fire. So we're doing well now. And there's going to be a lot of weed botany today, unfortunately. I'm kind of sad about that. Alright, that's Achillea millefolium, native Yarrow. Now it might be a species complex, so in the end it's not end up being a different species, depending on what the botanists make of it, the geneticist, because it's a very wide-ranging species, and a lot of us tend to actually just be species complexes. Yeah, I was hoping for a more upbeat video today. This guy is Isatis tinctoria, also known as Dyer's Woad. It's the plant used in Europe for indigo dye. It makes the exact same compound as members of the genus Indigofera. That one's in Fabaceae, and it's more tropical and produces much more indigo dye. But this one isn't apparently such a bad source for it. And I guess the pioneers must have brought it over to produce indigo dye, but now it's just a pretty nasty feral weed. The seeds are getting mature, but I believe when they're mature, they turn into this like sort of dead plant color, very similar to like the Alyssum desertorum. We see it on there, that sort of beige color. But when they're turning black like this, that's a good sign they're getting ready to drop their seeds and that they're mature. So you might have to change the way you control them. Like instead of just cutting them and leaving them on the ground, you have to bag them. I hate bagging weeds. I like letting them remain and hopefully break down, but sometimes it's just so much biomass in one big pile, you really have to take it all back. Sorry for jostling the camera there. Well, this kind of stinks, honestly, but I mean, there's a good thing that these trees are starting to do well. But real big shame. I can't imagine this was a very good winter for them either, with all the sort of lack of rain and precipitation overall. But really, what can you do, unfortunately? It's a lot of work to try and control all these weeds. And I think Salt Lake City has bigger priorities, or different priorities, that maybe not, I don't want to say are necessarily more important, but it's a lot of things they have to do with their money. I don't know. Now, another plant I'm seeing quite commonly here in this recovering site is this grass, which is Aegilops cylindricus, another, unfortunately, invasive species of grass, probably native to Central Asia or the Near East, probably the Near East actually, or the Mediterranean. That's where almost all invasive species in the region tend to come from. Very Tethyan distribution. Of course, I got this one as well. These white flowers on the ground everywhere are convolvulus arvensis, or field bindweed. Yeah, it's another non-native. That might be more native to Northern Europe, actually. I'm not fully sure. It is a fairly attractive plant, at least in terms of its flowers, but it's a pretty annoying weed, and their seeds can last forever. And it's almost impossible to smother and get rid of these damn things. They can grow back from the roots so easily. They're very hard to control. Like when I worked for the city, we almost didn't even bother with most of them. We tried solarizing a site, and it was crazy how much they could just keep growing. Like all underneath the weed fabric just to reach sunlight again. Really hard to kill these guys. But this is all in general just a great example of what happens when there's a lot of invasive species present in an area and there's a major disturbance like a fire. The invasive species, which tend to be weedy colonists, you have a really good opportunity to expand their range, expand their numbers, and just take over a site. And although, as long as these oaks keep growing, they will likely eventually overtop them and smother them. Their seeds will remain and be there waiting for the next fire, waiting for the next opportunity to expand. A lot of people might say that, well, it's not really the invasive species' fault because all they do is wait for disturbances, but it's kind of missing the point. Disturbances are always a part of a natural, healthy ecosystem. That's not including all the other man-caused disturbances. I believe this wildfire was caused by a lightning strike, but other ones are frequently caused by people, and that's simply just not going to change. So we got to really you need a multi-pronged approach to deal with protecting the environment and restoring it to a better state. Taking factors invasive species that always need to be dealt with, that there's always going to be extra disturbance when humans are living nearby. Oh, that's a kind of a cool moth. Oh, nice. But anyways, I think you get my point I'm trying to make. Maybe it's not the invasive species' fault that they're invasive, but that doesn't mean we have to tolerate them. And just saying, oh, it's not their fault, it's the fact that there's so much disturbance in nature. It's like, well, that's just kind of how it is. Well, this is kind of nice. Got a lot of Calochortus nutalii coming up, which is, of course, the Sego Lily, the state flower of Utah. Well, that's known as the Mariposa lilies, which is just a general term to refer to the species of Calochortus. It's a large genus, but one that has most of its species in California, with all the rest being found variously in Western North America. This one definitely has the broadest range of any of the species. And a lot of the California ones are only found in like one mountain or in one county and stuff like that. You can see more of the Lepidium draba covering the forest floor here. I was mentioning earlier, this place seems to have a lot more of it, though it's already ready to go to seed. Yeah, it is nice to see that these Gambel Oaks are doing all right. This one's already about over 3 feet tall, and it's only I guess technically it's 3 years worth of growth, because even though most of the time they finish up their growth and are just focused on photosynthesizing after late June, when I went to visit this place in late 2024 the first time, these shoots had already grown up. So I guess they were taking advantage of whatever little bit of sunlight and head start they could get in the autumn growing season. It's usually not as good as the spring growing season for most plants. In fact, I said Gambel Oak usually just takes advantage of the spring growing season. But yeah, got my head start. So it's about 3 years worth of growth. These zones are of course shorter. Oh, look at that. Is that a musk thistle? Like a carduus or something? I can't remember what the musk thistles are called. Non-native either way, though these thistles actually are native. some specimens of or Circeum neomexicanum, or possibly undulatum. And one of them tends to have more your pink, white, or creamish colored flowers. So they're very white, with a little bit of pink. So I'll try and look up which of them they might be. Maybe it's undulatum. They're too difficult to tell apart species for sure, and some might even question whether or not they are separate. But it is a very nice flower for sure. There's no denying that. Well, for actually nice grasses, here we have Aristida purpurea, also known as purple freon. If you were to look at the awns, there'd of course be 3 of them, and he looks sort of purplish. Tough native grass, can grow well amongst invasives. Nice perennial bunch grass. I believe it's fairly long-lived. It's only compared to the annual invasives we usually get. There of course are some invasive bunch grasses, but generally speaking, bunch grasses are going to tend to be native here, while most annual grasses are non-native. Yeah, nice plant overall. And just to finish up, this is what a unburnt, healthy Quercus gambelii forest looks like. See, they grow pretty dense. It's a pretty thick brush to get through. And there's usually not a whole lot of plants in the understory when they're mature like this. And this really is mature. We typically don't get much taller than this. On rich sites with deep soils, they can get fairly tall actually, but usually they grow on rockier hillsides like this. However, growing ain't so easy, but this is sort of what you expect them to look like. These ones are growing more straight-trunked and tall. Straight-trunked and tall. And there's a few grasses, probably mostly invasive anyways, growing amongst them. Can also grow in different ways in the desert, like more thickety. I mean, it's actually already a pretty big thicket, but even more so sometimes on sand dunes. But it might be one of the other oak species like Quercus welchii or Quercus havardii. But anyways, we expect. Unfortunately, there's definitely some invasion of non-native grasses that we have going on, but otherwise, it's a fairly decent forest, and there are even some native, like lomatiums I'm starting to see here. But thanks for watching, and see you next time. Hope you learned something good. Oh, Hesperostypa comata, how I've missed you. Without a doubt, my favorite native grass species. Okay, this time I promise, last I'm going to show you guys, Asclepias asperilla. A native spider milkweed. You see it very commonly in the foothills here. This one's interesting because it doesn't have quite opposite leaves. I mean, they're nearly opposite, but not quite, as you can see there. Of course, I'm implying milkweeds are usually known for having opposite leaves. Not going to demonstrate its milky sap this time. Learned my lesson about doing that. But a really cool plant all around. I wish people tried cultivating this more in their gardens, because it looks really nice in my opinion.